The plan today is to riff first as part of a function of a brainstorming session for something that I will teach later. You're just going to watch us make some sausage.
This is a sausage channel. Well, it is about masculine initiation, so.
You want to just jump right into the deep end?
Sure.
Initiate by me.
All right. So last podcast you cut. Actually, catch me up to speed. The last thing you posted, we were talking about power polarities, or where were we at when the last thing that you posted?
So we were talking about how the shadow polarities operate with the archetypes. So we went through all of those, and I made some pretty nifty infographics. Okay, so we had, the lover, which would be the shadow polarities there, positive and negative, masculine, feminine, were the addict and I think you called it the loser, or the impotent.
Oh, the impotent loser, yeah.
The impotent. So either you're just so overwhelmed with this energy that you cease to be able to function properly because you keep returning to the same source for fulfillment. You're overdoing everything, or the impotence, you just don't have that gusto or that appreciation to be able to access the lover energy in the first place.
Right.
And so we went through all of them. So warrior, sadist, and masochist, right? So the magician was the ventriloquist and the lover. I'm sorry, the ventriloquist and the puppet.
Yeah.
The king was the tyrant and the abdicator.
Right.
And then at the end of that episode, you said, whoa, I'm going to get really meta here. And you kind of did like the shadow polarity of the shadow itself. Right? Because there is this common theme running through all of those polarities. It's excess and sort of lack of. So what I came up with in that infographic was, and it was based off of what you said, was the two basically main shadow polarities when it comes to, we could say, failing at shadow integration, would be saying, we actually use the example of weight loss. Okay, so I weigh 300 pounds and I wake up one day and and I'm so mad at myself, and I say, okay, I'm gonna run 3 miles a day and I'm going to never play a video game again. And I will never eat a bag of Doritos again. So you assault yourself with this hyper discipline that is probably unobtainable. Okay, so you're setting yourself up for failure because you probably can't do it in the first place. And then even more failure if you are capable of that, because now you're not able to feel pleasure anymore. You're punishing yourself. You've lost part of yourself.
Right.
And this is when we're talking about integration here, right? So in the sense that when you're trying to lose weight, it's you're trying to be your best form. You're trying to become your best form.
Right.
So you shouldn't be hating yourself. You should be treating yourself with compassion. Then the other polarity. So you had the extreme discipline, and then you had
the extreme lack. So the idea of that is based on Psalm 23, which is, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, is what everybody thinks it says. What it actually says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in lack. Lack there is the same word for to crave or desire, or the pain that comes from that, which in Hindu or Buddhism is called dukkha.
dukkha.
Right? The pain caused from suffering. The suffering, it's funny because suffering is not pain. For example, some people love BDSM. They are suffering, but they are not in pain. Or maybe they're in pain, but they're not suffering. So some aspect of it, of the emotional feeling of I don't have enough, I won't have enough, and I'm afraid that I will never have enough, right? Somewhere in there you cross a threshold of suffering, compassion to suffer with. So I would say that suffering is fine, but as soon as your suffering transmutes into an unendurable pain, it's now on its path to darkness. Because now you get into Sith Lord thinking, right? So as soon as you experience pain, you get into absolutes.
Aha. So the pain is taking you to either like such an extreme where you're going to try to drill sergeant yourself.
Yeah, so take
probably
a king.
fail, or you're going to over comfort yourself.
Yeah, so if you take a king, like take Putin right now. Why not? Why not? Let's bring some current affairs in. Let's do the deal. So a Putin type character, he's already the president, dictator, or whatever he is. Okay. Now, the problem is that if the Lord is not your shepherd, and I mean like the Lord, like you have this higher power kind of North Star thing that you're chasing, Jung calls it the transpersonal other. Okay. And without this transpersonal other to pursue and to seek out, the self will never actually be found. So the self is actually, part of the self is actually found in finding this transpersonal other. But I never mind that. I say that because I talk about God a lot and I want to make sure people understand what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Putin is in lack. He doesn't have enough power. He doesn't have enough authority. People view him not favorably enough. And so because of this sense of, he's not chasing from a position of power. All tyrants chase from a position of weakness because they're afraid that they will not maintain the power or whatever the case may be in that way. So it's the same spirit. Both chase in lack. I have so much power, but I may lose it, or I need to get rid of it, or I have to get more of it, or that kind of scary thing. Or I don't have any power. I'll never have any power, so I'll just eat some Doritos.
Sure. Yeah.
But both are derived from a sense of lack, that I am not enough.
Okay. So that's an example of like the tyrant archetype of the king. Right?
That's an example of so this is what I wanted to kind of talk about today. Then this is a perfect segue. So in my mind, the polarities. On the positive side, you have this grandiosity, right? And then on the negative side, you have like insignificance. And so grandiosity is those feelings of like, I am God, I'm so great, I can't do anything wrong. Everything I touch turns to gold, like I'm amazeballs, whatever it is. And then the other side, which is the side that's more insidious to me. Because you see a guy walking around being all grandiose or whatever, like people just kick him in the shins. I was listening to a podcast last night and they're like, the nail that sticks up is the one that gets whacked. And the guy who walks around being grandiose, that's just what happens. Like his friends, his neighbors, his coworkers, his family, they're just going to just whack that nail and just.
Yeah, he's got it coming and he's going to get it. And if he's not too dense, he'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And he'll probably be okay.
So grandiosity is actually not the biggest of all the problems. It can be a problem. I struggle with grandiosity. For sure, 100%.
No.
Yeah, I do. I do. No, Bryan, it's true. I do.
Okay.
Now, what I see more often, though, and when I fall into this is terrible, which is the insignificant trap.
I'm going to go ahead and agree with you that that's way more insidious. And there is a polarity there. As someone who's experienced both sides of it.
Sure.
I tend to think of the first one as the Icarus Daedalus dilemma,
Right.
Flying too close to the sun with your wax wings, right?
Yeah.
And then you fall. It's much harder to get up after that fall. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, and then you think about those old heights that you had reached when you were, say, on the more grandiose side of making love to your ego, if you will.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to be a better person now, so you might associate all the best parts of you when you were like really on, but also kind of a dickhead.
Yeah.
And then it makes it difficult for you to reintegrate with those good parts of you because now you associate them with the wings melting and smacking to the ground.
Yeah. That is that is part of that emotional swing. And so if you are the kind of person that remembers pain, there is a good chance that you'll remain in insignificant territory because it's just safe. You just won't get crushed quite like that. Now, if you're somebody like me, who doesn't remember pain very well, have I ever explained this to you?
No.
At any like real level of my lack of ability to remember pain?
No, this is new.
Okay. So something that I've been really like thinking about. This is gonna be a long side rant, but
Sure.
maybe but you guys are watching sausage being made, so just whatever, right? Okay, so I read a book. Somebody asked me a long time ago about my ADHD. And we'll get back to grandiosity and insignificance in a little bit, Dad. Don't worry. Okay. My dad's always like talking about that kind of stuff. So don't worry, Dad. We'll get there. So insignificance, grandiosity. When I was younger, I had really bad ADHD, but my mom refused to ever get me tested as to whether or not I had ADHD. Now, fast forward to when I'm 35, and I got this therapist, and he looks at me and he's like, my kid has ADHD, my wife has ADHD, and we talked about it for a while, and he's like, look, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, and it flies in a V with other ducks, and it's got webbed feet, I'm not saying you're a duck, but maybe. And then maybe what was it, a week and a half or 2 weeks later, somebody comes up to me and says, oh, I was joking with them. And I said, yeah, I think I had ADHD. And she says, you know what? My husband does too. And you should read a book called The Drummer and the Great Mountain. So I read this book called The Drummer and the Great Mountain. And essentially what it got to was that people with ADHD is actually evolutionarily biological hunters. That's their actual, because their job is to hyper focus on one thing for 20 hours and then to move while hunting for maybe another 10 hours or something. And then if you miss your target, you have to do it again. And you better not remember the pain of the 30 hours you just spent focusing and sitting.
This makes me think of autism as well, because people talk about ADHD all the time, and it seems like more and more people have it. And then there's the same thing with autism. Mm-hmm. Yeah, now conspiracies about whatever they're putting in the water or whatever.
Yeah, or jabs or something. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, which is total and utter nonsense. We would never discuss such things.
We're not medical professionals.
No.
We're getting there.
I've got a point. It just, that's too funny. Okay, so what if a lot of these psychological dispositions that are becoming more and more pervasive are precisely, I mean, not precisely, but linked to this concept of we have this ancient biological memory that isn't coming to fulfillment. So I thought of the autistic person who is also known for obsession and hyperfocus.
Right.
Now, they not being groomed to be a hunter, and then perhaps, not being really groomed to be much of anything.
Well, the big difference I would say in terms of just to jump in real quick,
sure,
which is that ADHD people need to be in motion. Their bodies never want to not be in motion. I am only able, when I go on a 200-mile backpacking trip and I'm by myself and nobody's around me, I'm literally walking or in motion from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. If I'm not actively moving forward on the trail, I'm walking in circles around my campsite. Kid you not. I'm literally in motion most of the time.
Believe it or not, I have some of that too. Now, I wouldn't say I'm ADHD, but I pace like a maniac.
Okay.
When I'm thinking, I am pacing.
Now that's what Aristotle calls peripatetic. One who thinks while walking.
Peripatetic?
Peripatetic, yeah.
Peripatetic.
There you go, guys. Peripatetic.
Peripatetic. That is a fun word.
That is a great word. You're welcome.
I'm going to put that in my Tinder profile.
There you go.
I am a peripatetic musician.
Philosopher, yep. And then you gotta say extraordinaire. And spelled it with the A-I-R-E.
I need a pipe. I need a hat.
And a Nietzsche stash. So what I'm saying is that on the side of things, grandiosity is a funny thing. Because let's say that you're in Viking culture.
It is funny.
It is funny. So let's say you're in Viking culture. The whole thing of being in Viking culture is to become a Durgar or Durfar. I can't remember the exact name. I'll figure it out one of these days. It's one who is remembered in legacy by storytelling, and they thought that the only thing you can't take anything to Valhalla. What you can leave behind though is your legacy and people telling stories about you.
So you have to become a meme.
Yeah.
That's kind of like an apotheosis, sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. Maybe, not literally I'm going to become God, but that's a reoccurring theme, I think, in a lot of religions and spiritual practices.
Right.
Is this idea like, well, you have to kind of embed yourself into, say, the Matrix. Yeah.
Right. So let's say your average. Not every Viking's goal was to become remembered. Now let's say you talk to every person in America, and you say, "What's your goal?" And they're like, "To become remembered, honored, legacy-driven person." The average person is gonna be like, "There's 350 million people in this country, and you can't have 350 million legacies and mythologies. Like, you know what? You just like it'd be way better if you just sunk into the rest of us and jumped into your collective unconscious, and just
Shut up, bitch.
Well,
I'm a SoundCloud rapper. I was born to be a SoundCloud rapper.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the best SoundCloud rapper with the best Insta stories you've ever seen.
Ever.
And I will be awaited in Meme Valhalla.
Yeah, very good. Me in Malhalla. Meme Valhalla. Okay, anyways. So the idea here is that if you brought the average Viking into today's culture, every Viking would be completely and utterly grandiose.
Yeah, I mean,
it would be a disorder.
It would be kind of like a hipster thing. Like you move to Portland or Austin and everyone's wearing their cool clothes and they're going to be a rock star, which, I would never...
You would never understand any of that kind of culture.
I would never wander into that all willy-nilly. No. But it would almost be like the Vikings are a bunch of hipsters. It's like, oh, yeah, you play guitar. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to be a rock star? All right.
Yeah. So you go to L.A.
You're going to be waited at Valhalla? Right?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah. You're going to buy some galleys with good oars?
Yeah.
Sail. Hugh Matty Foeman?
Yep. We're going to hew the foeman.
That's what they all say.
Okay, so now you walk in, but let's say you brought your average American, and you took them back in time. They touched a portal, and they get whisked away, and we are circa 980 AD, and the Vikings are battling the Christians, and your average American is there, and they're like, "To Valhalla! Who's this guy?" And you're like, "Well, I don't mind if we pillage, but I don't really want to hurt anybody." And, I want to, they would look at you and they would say, "You have a disorder." No, I'm serious. They'd be like, "You got a disorder. We got stuff to do. You have a problem." They'd be like, we need the sinews from his skin to make a bowstring because the sinew from his body is going to be more worthwhile as a bowstring than it is from him actually doing anything.
I like the idea of being awaited in Valhalla, but actually, doing the thing, it's like, can I just post about it on Viking Instagram?
Well, you could Vikagram, you could post on it.
That'd just be a bard that makes up stories about how many heads I've chopped off.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so we have this problem. But the problem is with the word disorder, right? ADHD.
Okay.
I don't have a disorder. I'm evolutionarily designed to be a hunter. I am not designed to sit in neat little rows in a classroom. Trust me, I was the worst kid. I wasn't even a bad kid. I just was not able to sit still for that long. Good Lord.
It's like when a fat kid says, his mom tells him, "You're not fat, you're big boned."
Yeah. Yeah.
No, okay, that's a bad joke. I actually completely agree with you. I don't think ADHD should be looked at as a disease. or a disorder. One term that's been coming up in like pop psychology lately, which is it's a little tainted with the wokeness, but I don't necessarily dislike the term.
The wokeness.
Yeah.
It's like the nothing.
The nothing, yes, the nothing from the never-ending story is very woke. It devours all back from whence it came to the matrix of darkness. Yes. Oh goodness, it's like the term is neurodivergence. Now, I kind of hate that term on one level, and on another level, it's like, well, it kind of works. I hate it because it kind of puts you in the I'm a special victim category. Still kind of got that. I'm neurodivergent. That's a thing that I can be in order to stand out. But it makes more sense. It's like, okay, my skill tree, my skill set, my class, my Dungeons and Dragons character that got rolled for me by God's dice, if you will. Of course, God does not play dice with the universe. But
No, that's technically speaking in scripture he does, but that's not the space.
oh, we'll have to earmark that one.
Yeah,
That could be a fun
God
conversation.
definitely does appear in the way of casting lots. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, I would like to dedicate a whole episode to
We
that
could do
because
that.
that's really interesting. We could talk about the I Ching.
We can talk about casting runes, rolling the bones.
Oh, I'm really excited for this one. Okay, but not today. We could maintain some continuity. So yeah, I would call it. Well, okay. So it's like you have this skill set. It doesn't conform very well to the lowest common denominator default settings provided by society.
Yeah.
So in the case, I'd say, of someone with ADHD or whatever it is that those words are being used to describe more accurately, the map is not the territory. The name of the thing is not the thing.
Right. You can't eat the menu.
There's a polarity there. There is like you're operating in extremes because of the necessity to go out and hunt requires that you be able to deal with extremes. Extremely doing nothing for 12 hours. If there's any buck hunters out there, they know all about that.
It's extreme.
Yeah. But then when it's time to actually, you get excited, you finally see the 10-point buck, but then you gotta calm down. And then that's, you're working in extremes. You're excited, your heart's pumping, but your heart pumping really fast. It's not good for pulling the trigger.
Right.
So then you gotta you get all excited, then you gotta bring it down, and then you gotta shoot the buck. And if you do hit the buck now, you've gotta drag it through the snow, and it's huge and heavy, and it's just it's a lot.
It is a ton.
And there's a lot of extremes there.
And so the issue there is that there is people who are, and in that way you're expecting, as you're quartering the buck and bringing it back to your tribe, you're expecting the tribe to celebrate when you get back that you brought your buck. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, one thing that drives the young hunter out to go and do that deal is there is a little bit of grandiosity in there, right? The guy who moves to Austin with the intention to become a rock star, or moves to LA to become an actor, or moves to Silicon Valley to have a startup, right? Like California is just like the cesspool of grandiosity in some ways.
Californication.
Exactly. So you got this concept of people are pursuing this grandiosity. Okay, so then the rest of the world, though, they're all stuck in kind of insignificant land, right? And then there's this oscillation between the two. Now, one of my favorite quotes from Gurdjieff, and I don't think we haven't really talked a lot about Gurdjieff on this channel. They wrote a book called
We have personally.
We have personally. Okay, so The Fourth Way of Consciousness, which is one of the most bizarre books ever written. I would say certainly one of the most bizarre that I've ever read. But he has a great line in there. Well, he has a lot of great lines. But one of the best lines is that it is anti-evolutionary to engage in self-improvement.
Whoa.
All right, so I'm going to unpack this just a tad.
Please.
So because we don't see animals out there, like you don't see dogs out there doing wind sprints to be able to get deer faster. You don't see birds really, pushing their swoop capacity, their dive capacity to you don't see them manually plucking additional feathers to get a little bit more velocity. You don't see bears out there inventing berry picker things. Okay, so So because you don't see any animals in nature, nowhere in nature do you see individual creatures engaging in self-improvement. It's a funny thing, but if every one of those animals engaged in some sort of individual self-improvement, you would not have as much like the archetype of bear. I say bear to you, and you're like, oh yeah, bear, right?
Putin is bear.
I say person to you, and you're like, or human being, and like, you have no idea what I am talking
It's
about.
kind of a blank slate. Yeah.
Like,
I'm imagining a mannequin. It's like,
yeah, like
dress-up doll.
Okay, I say bear, and let's say you're like the world's greatest bear enthusiast, right?
Oh, grizzly man.
Okay, you're a grizzly man, and I say bear to you. You're gonna have maybe 150 ideas of bear, but I say language to you. There's 750 languages in Indonesia alone, right? So when we sit down as individuals and we try to engage in self-improvement, that is actually not really very good, technically speaking, for the survival of our species.
Okay, I want you to keep going with that point, not to derail. But I do want to just mention real quick the argument you don't see animals doing X. Well, I don't think it's not a bad place to start, because I do think we should be able to learn a lot about ourselves and what's like natural and like what we would call unnatural, and it's worthwhile. But you could also say, well, you don't see animals writing Moby Dick or building skyscrapers or composing symphonies either. So
right. But all of those traits were given to them by other people who were engaging in self-improvement.
Okay. So keep on with your self-improvement.
Yeah.
I don't want to derail you.
Yeah, no, so the idea is that as you engage in self-improvement, you're then able to say, look at me, I've made fire, grandiosity. Or you could say, look at me, I can't make fire, insignificance. Okay?
Okay, and so are we in agreement that perhaps it is better to err to the side of grandiosity than it is to impotence?
Well, to a point.
Yeah, because both are equally...
They're equally bad,
fucked.
Except for the guy who succeeds in his grandiosity becomes so evil that it's almost it's like as though we should have just let Hitler into art class.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So it's funny because this is the I think this is the great reset idea, that we should just keep everybody insignificant, because the people who are involved in becoming the big leaders of the World Economic Forum, right? Well, at least we know each other, and why don't we just rule the world?
They're also really lame, so they probably aren't that grandiose. I mean, you look at Klaus Schwab and he's got his little costume and everything, but like...
Oh no, to them,
He's
the more
kind of
power
weird.
the more power you can obtain
Yeah.
without appearing powerful, the more they sit in the back, and like to them,
That's cool.
ultimate power is saying, "Look at me, I conquered the world."
Like TV.
Not like
Yeah.
phenomenal cosmic power.
But it's the same thing. It's like the non-ego ego, right? You see this with spiritual people all the time. I call it the reverse dick contest. My ego is so small. Like I have such a micro penis. I think I might actually have the smallest micro penis. Have you even had an ego death? Have you even transcended your personal grandiosity? No, actually, my dick goes in. It goes up inside. You fucking loser. You know what I'm saying?
Got it. Okay. Okay. Yeah, and so I think they're definitely trying something like that.
Yeah.
And it works that way. Like, it works that way. So you have to be aware of, if you're insignificant, there's a lot of benefits to being insignificant. Like truckloads, boatloads. There are pant loads of benefits to insignificance. And I think a lot of people just, when it comes to shadow integration, they don't really sit around and think about like, why is being insignificant and ignorant awesome? I will tell you all of the reasons that it is amazing to be insignificant and ignorant.
Sure.
First, no one has any responsibility of you. Nobody cares what you do.
Right. It's like the kid that figures out, like, well, if I keep getting D's, the expectations are now suddenly here. So,
Yeah.
so if I get a D plus, it's like, ooh, buy
You
me
go
a
to
video game.
Disneyland, yeah. So, like, I mean, it is an incredible feeling when you wake up one day and you realize that nobody cares. And it's like the weight of the world just falls off of you because you're like celebrating that nobody cares about you.
Yeah.
And then one day you wake up and you're so depressed because nobody cares about you anymore.
It's the poles. It's the extremes.
Yeah. So the other benefits of being insignificant is that you don't have to expect anything out of yourself either. And I think a lot of people really take a lot of comfort and solace that they wake up and they can say to themselves, and I think the best battle cry for insignificance is Atlas Shrugged, who is John Galt. Right? That is the battle cry of insignificance. Well, the World Economic Forum is coming to, take over all of us and take everything we have, blah, 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 blah. And I guess it's just happening. Well, yeah. Well, who is John Galt? Right? And so there is like the joy of resignation is that anytime you feel that icky, I could do something about this feeling, you can just resort to insignificance and you can kind of soothe that part of you.
So I think the thing to do here, I'm going to describe a shadow integration, I guess, in a different way.
Sure.
But I think it's the same thing. It's going to be shadow integration. If you break that duality, okay, either I am the most special little boy in the world, or I'm so insignificant I'm going to kill myself because nobody loves me.
Yes.
Okay, how do you do neither? Okay, and I'm going to borrow something from Zen. There's a concept called mu. So imagine you're sort of presented with this either or perhaps a loaded question.
Yeah.
Drew, have you stopped beating your wife?
Yes.
Right? This sort of impossible question to answer.
Yes.
By accepting it, you're like, now you are trapped within you either like Pepsi or Coke.
Yeah.
Right. So mu is sort of like nolo contendo, or like I plead the fifth, kind of. But you are completely disregarding what you're being asked or the statement. You're not confirming, you're not denying, you're kind of like outside of it. And you're like, no, I'm not doing that.
Right.
I see this shadow integration is kind of like applying that mu to like break out of the one or the other. Like, well, I'm either a winner or I'm a loser.
Right.
If you're stuck in that polarity, okay, then you're going to have a really hard time. Now look at the average person these days. People have been worshipping Hollywood in some sense for so long, and the stars in the sky, right? And sure. Now we've got Instagram, we've got the SoundCloud and all that. The SoundCloud. Okay, boomer.
Hey, we've got middle-aged men trying to become YouTube stars.
Right. So there's this narcissism that I think in the West people really have. They do get ensnared in that. Well, I'm either awesome or I'm a loser. And I guess what I'm arguing is, what if you were able to disregard that entirely? Because that's like a mirror.
Well,
That's a mirror of judgment. Who's saying you're a loser or who's saying you're a winner? Is that why you're operating? And then you stare into the mirror, and the mirror is like society, but it's yourself. And now you are caught in self-worship. You are caught in self-worship, and you're either really, really high and feeling really, really good about your selfies and your likes, or you want to kill yourself because you're not getting enough food and enough attention. But either way, you're not being a very good human being. I don't want to kick you when you're down.
All right.
Narcissist.
Yeah. So can you do my coffee? I set it on the side of you over there. I'm dying over here. Okay. So I would like to talk about this because I did process some of this through, right? Okay. So guys, look, here's the deal. If you made it this far or whatever, like, let us know what you would like to talk about. Like the whole like leave a comment thing. Like, no, it's actually helpful. Like it actually is. It's helpful for many reasons, not just algorithmically, but also because I actually would like to know who's listening, and I actually would like to talk back to you on the YouTube platform. Like, I mean that actually, not like leave a like and a comment, but like I actually would like to talk to you on the platform.
I would actually like you to like and subscribe right now.
Also that too. Okay. We should put that at the beginning of the video, even though we recorded it in the middle. Okay. The problem is that in America, you were told you could be the next Abraham Lincoln. That's the problem. You were told that you could be the next Bill. I remember I wrote a short story on this. We should post it.
You're going to say the next Bill Clinton?
No, Bill Gates.
Oh.
You could be the next Jeffrey Epstein. Like you, somebody, some child somewhere was the next Weinstein.
Oh, no.
Somebody. So this is just it. And we're told when you go to graduation, okay, and I did. I wrote a short story about what my high school graduation was like. And we are going to post that on the channel. It's already recorded. It's fairly good.
Oh, cool.
I sent it to Steph a while ago.
Does it need music?
It does. It needs a little bit of music, but we'll set it there. The issue is that in America, we're told that you can be anything. And so if you are not the next Abraham Lincoln, you are literally a failure. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is if you become the next Joe Biden, there is nowhere to go but down. And the second you are no longer president, you are actively a failure. And so does this make sense? Like, even if you make it to the top, the second you're not the top, you're back to zero. And back to suffering again. So the entire game of Americana, you can be anything, it's just awful. It's emotional torture, I think, to tell kids that you can be anything. You can choose to be.
When you combine it with, and now we're going to make everything really easy for you and lie to you.
Oh, and now we're going to make
sets you up for even more failure. It's like when they play pranks on people, where they build up your ego. Like, you know, they put you in a box and tell you, oh yeah, you're the funniest guy ever, and then they bring you out to the stand-up night, and then you bomb, but like you think you're like this really funny guy. That's a really cruel thing to do to somebody.
Is that a thing?
I've heard of such pranks, yes.
That's got to destroy somebody.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
So Moses in the Bible says this curious statement in Deuteronomy. It says, I am the most humble man who ever lived. Now, I'm getting back to this to get back to your Mew situation. And also with Mew, we have the idea of Wu Wei, and we also have the idea of Tot Tot.
I don't know Tot Tot.
You know Tot Tot? Okay.
I know Tater Tots.
Ooh, I know Tater Tots, man. All right. Smash Burger Tater Tots. Best Tater Tots in the
I haven't been to Smash Burger yet.
Get the balsamic vinegar Smash Tots.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it's really good. Anyways, okay, so Moses says, I am the most humble man who ever lived. The funny thing about that statement is that to be humble is biblically speaking, is to speak the truth as God sees you. To speak of yourself as God speaks of you.
A non-distorted, non-grandiose vision of yourself where you are loved, you are accepted, you're generally good, and it's like a clear vision that you're not obsessed with. No, yeah, that polarity.
You can't, if you only speak of yourself as God speaks of you, then you are not interjecting your grandiosity or your insignificance into the statement. They are actually not included in the statement.
Right. When people, going back to my, little dick contest thing,
Yeah.
it's the same thing when people say the universe is infinite and we're just so tiny. I'm just a tiny little speck. If you hear somebody talking like that, it's like you can probably assume they have issues with grandiosity, like really, really bad.
And you can also assume they're
hilarious.
probably
It's like, man, you don't need to go you don't need to go to that extreme. Like, if you have the need to be like, oh, I'm so insignificant, it's like, well, you're probably dealing with being the other thing. It's like, you need that much more water to put out the fire.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So Moses says, I'm the most humble man who ever lived, which is actually a humble statement, right? And tat is the Hindu word for that.
Oh.
Thatness, or like that is that I am that I am, right? That's the Hebrew word for God. I am that I am. In the same way, tat is tat. It's this is like a standard thing. Can you own a tree? I am that I am, thatness, which leads inevitably to Wu Wei, which is non-force, non-action, non-whatever. Okay, so we could talk for probably an hour on each one of these ideas here. But the Christian idea of mythology, I am that I am who I am, right? When you are who you are, you do not need to force or try to be who you are. When you are who you are, you don't have to try to set yourself apart with your grandiosity. When you are who you are, you don't need to feel insignificant because you're not as good as other people. Now, the final element here, I believe it is Chesterton who said that comparison is the thief of joy.
Interesting. When you start comparing things, delineating, you're creating distinctions. Now, the creation of distinctions is a very important and useful thing. But if you think of your ability to do that, imagine it's like a knife, and you're chopping up the oneness and the wholeness, like the monad, and into tiny little parts. You're reducing. You're a reductionist, right?
Right.
This can be very useful, but if it's something, if you're using that knife for everything all the time, like, what is this? Oh, someone gave me a compliment. What does that mean?
Let's slice it in half.
Yeah. And then stare in the mirror.
Yep.
That's hell.
Now let's do this, and then we'll slice it in half.
That's like a Fibonacci sequence that spirals you straight to hell.
Straight to hell.
Yeah.
And so there's another curious quote in the Bible that says, those who compare themselves among themselves to themselves are not wise.
Ugh, that just made me sick to my stomach.
Yeah, but it's great though, right?
Hell is very meta.
So let's watch this cycle of comparison here.
Okay.
So I don't even know if I can do it, but we'll try. So we have this is why I hate certain YouTube ideas. So you see this YouTube clip, and the YouTube clip says, "Get woke, go broke," right? And me as a libertarian, of course, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, right?
You appeal to my sensibilities.
You appeal to my value system. And we're just going to draw one comparison right there, right? Never mind the fact that within that comparison are 1,000 other comparisons, right?
Okay.
And then how did I become a libertarian? By drawing comparison lines on every single political viewpoint and realizing, that I fall into this libertarian kind of thing, right? But the more I separate and keep separating, and then I watch the YouTube video, and then I'm like, yeah, and then I get more separated, more comparison, more this, more, and then it's like, then the video gets over, and then I'll watch another one, and I get more comparison oriented. At the end of all of this, I don't even know enough about myself in relationship to the world to be able to say anything true about myself without it being a comparison.
It's like a hall of mirrors
Yeah.
or something like this. It's like, yeah, meta. It's like all of these layers, all of these reality tunnels within tunnels within tunnels that go nowhere.
Right.
Because, I mean, imagine, maybe you don't have to imagine. Let's talk about the ideologically possessed. They are stuck viewing reality through one lens, one reality tunnel, or thinking, to relate to what you're saying, we'll say one way to create comparisons, distinctions.
Okay.
I am this, I am not that.
Right.
Kind of where it starts. I have this ideology. I have a hammer, and that's all I have, and therefore all I see are nails.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to wake up, I'm going to go through the world like that. Everything's going to be this layer, this nesting of comparisons, of delineating, of I am this and I am not that, and this is right and this is wrong. That person loses the ability to just be and then realize, well, I don't need to do that all the time. There's
Right.
a time and a place to do that.
None of those comparisons are necessary
No, of course not.
at all for you to know you. Like, a lot of times people think that it is in the comparisons or it is in the differentiations that they are separate from another human. I'm different from you, not because we like the same things, but what makes me different from you is that we alike or we appreciate different things. The truth is what you dislike or what I dislike or whatever you
Okay.
don't want.
May I interject with a Sufi fable?
Oh yeah, Sufi fables.
Yeah.
Man, where's the fire? Man, do it. Sufi fables.
Okay. So the Mullah Nasruddin or Narasuddin, I don't know how you say it. It's hard to say. I'm not Arabic. What can I say?
You can just say the story.
Well, no, this is the character I'm describing.
Oh, okay.
The Mullah. The Mullah is this kind of like the archetype of the bumbling wizard that you so much adore.
I do adore that.
Yeah, he's very much like that. Very clever, but in like a very strange, mystical,
Kind of
funny,
Rafiki kind of thing.
Sure, yeah, a little trickster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a little trickster. So he's wandering the world, doing his wandering mystic thing,
Okay.
and he comes across a predator animal and an herbivore animal. How about a wolf and a rabbit?
Okay.
Okay, and they're arguing. He walks up to the two of them and he's listening to their argument, and the wolf says, "Urgh, you must eat meat, you must eat flesh, you must live for the glory of the kill, you must tear the sinew apart, and then you have blood all over your whiskers, and yes, this is how you consume, this is how you grow." And then the muddy rabbit's like, no, you just eat, lettuce and shit. Like, you're so grandiose, wolf. This is how you get substance. You do it like this, and then you hop around, and they're just really going at it. Back and forth. And the mullah walks up and says, hey, guys, can you just calm down for a minute? Let's try a new perspective here, okay? You both like food, and you both have ways of getting the food, and that's a really important part of what you are. You mostly have this in common, so why don't you discuss what you have in common? And they look at each other for a minute. They're thinking. And then they turn on the mullah and they chase him away.
That's good.
They found a common enemy.
Ah.
They call these seed stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have like layers to them.
Yeah.
Like an onion, and they grow.
That's great. No, okay. I really like that. And it is true. And it is good. The fact of the matter is that when you're looking at shadow integration and you're looking at polarity and all this stuff, The first task of shadow integration is to take your eyes and your comparison off of everyone else. That's like step one. If you say, I am more integrated in my shadow than Bryan, I am immediately failing. Completely failing. I have integrated my shadow more than my father. Like, these are the most ridiculous ideas ever. Like, I want to integrate my shadow so that I can be a great person in comparison to everybody who I know who isn't great. You are failing. So the first thing to recognize is you cannot integrate your shadow for the purpose of being successful, which is why self-help books are so ridiculous, because you cannot make yourself better for the purpose of being successful. Success comes as a byproduct of not caring about the success coming. And you being yourself, and when you're yourself, you have the law of attraction. You attract other people because people so desperately want to be around people who like being themselves, that they like themselves.
Yeah.
But you cannot try to like yourself.
The success thing is like a mirror.
Yeah.
So perhaps the self-help guru is kind of being like, look, we'll take away this hall of mirrors. We'll simplify this. Oh, don't you feel better already? We'll take that away. We'll take this away. But then there's still that one lingering, you need to be successful. You are still comparing yourself. I'm
All right.
taking the role of guru, so it's implied that I would be the arbiter of whether or not you are successful.
Now, check this out. There is an actual answer to the problem of what do you do? Okay, so now let's take these two polarities as a lot of times as I see them. You have polarity of grandiosity, which is the person that wants to manifest everything now. Okay? And then you have the impotent polarity, which I would have generally called Wu Wei. Now manifesting is positive, and Wu Wei is positive in terms of in their healthy states. They do great things. But a lot of times when you're looking at this in the comparison way, you're like, I want to manifest power, or you're like, here's the deal. I just want to be insignificant, so I'm just going to non-force, non-action, and I'm going to let right action occur, okay? Like, non-force, non-action, screw you, manifesting guy, because I'm going to non-action my manifesting. I'm going to manifest everything until but these are actually both really positive things that should work together in absolute harmony without any comparison to anybody around you.
So are you saying that sometimes it's necessary to brute force your will, and then other times it's much better to back off and let the jet stream guide you?
You can never brute force your will. You can only brute force God's will. And I don't mean that in the pedantic kind of thing, but it is a legitimate correction.
Okay.
So this is how I view. My dad will tell you that I deal a lot, and I've dealt a lot with being very angry at the Taoists for the concept of Wu Wei and non-action and letting right action occur. Because nothing gets done. Or maybe everything gets done, but you can't duplicate it, so you can't keep being a part of the process of doing or of being, like you're not a part of it then. Like, I'm just letting right action occur, but I'm not getting the enjoyment of my own humanity of participating in the right action.
Right. Isn't that, it would be like saying, God, what do you want me to do today? And then so you get to this point where it's more like, okay, I'm God's puppet. God is the ventriloquist and I am the puppet. Well, there's like an abdication there, sort of like.
Well, and so in the Jungian side, the self, when you encounter the self, it's a capital S, which means it's God. Mm-hmm. So as you go through the process. And I'm not, at no point in time am I insinuating that I am God or that you are God, but I'm not insinuating that you are God and that I am not necessarily not God.
Nice from you.
Thank you. But I am insinuating that the reason the Lord's Prayer is so good, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Now, 2 chapters later in Matthew 10, Jesus says, but just so you know, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and violent men lay hold of it. Okay. So, your job, my job, and this isn't just my job. I would say that my job is a Christian, but I would say that my job is a person. The human's job as a person to be the happiest, most integrated person you can be is if you are manifesting in the service of your higher power on a day-to-day basis. So if every day somebody said, I know that I saw Drew today because there was a new piece of art, there was a new piece of poetry, there was a new, he made something. He engaged in the universe. And the world looks a lot more like what his heaven would be today than it did yesterday. Mm-hmm. So if every day I'm making it more of a heaven, and by that I mean I'm bringing heaven to earth, right? My job is to bring heaven to earth, and then to not be a pansy about it, but to actually realize that sometimes it's going to take violence or extreme force. But as long as I don't ever look at it like it's my will, my house, my company, I am a steward. I am a steward of the house. I am a steward of the company. I'm a steward of my family. Right? Now I am a steward of God's will. And for me to not do action, the steward's whole job is to take care of the thing. But he doesn't own the thing. So that's how you can engage with every aspect of your life without being the owner of it, or without deriving your sense of value from whether or not it succeeds or not.
I like what you're saying a lot. This resonates with me. I'm just going to go ahead and take on the role of the archetypal, let's say, cranky internet atheist. I'm seething right now. All right. For fun.
Seething, cranky internet.
Because I want to see what you would say. I want to hear what you would say in response
Let's do it.
to something like, well, okay. All right, so this guy, he's just taking his will, okay? But now he's saying it's God's will, and now he can do whatever the fuck he wants. Okay?
Right.
Let's be Bill Maher. Okay, so you go to church and they forgive you for doing whatever fucking stupid thing it is you do. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
Well, that's great. In what I'm doing, I don't actually worry about what you say. Like your opinion, as much as I appreciate it, is not an opinion that I actually... I've got to go write some poetry now. You can mute it or do whatever. What did you call it? It's. I don't have to interact with it. Mm-hmm. I'm so busy focusing on whatever it is I have to do. We could have the argument. I guess I could have the argument, but the point is that I actually am busy bringing heaven to earth. I don't have time to talk to you about whether or not what I'm doing is something you're okay with. I literally don't have time for this. Because I have actual work to do.
Well, I've got work to do too.
Okay, well, go yell at somebody else, you seething internet anarchist atheist.
This is my job. This is what I do.
Well,
this is my heaven into earth.
Well, I'm glad that your heaven is so full of angry people. And making other people angry and comparing everyone to everyone else. I'm pretty certain your heaven is bringing other people to hell, which is making you like Satan. Really? That's your heaven? Being Satan?
Well, I thought Satan was like really cool. I don't know.
Maybe he is. I got some poetry.
He's misunderstood, okay? Haven't you seen that show where he's like this cool guy in a suit with a British accent and he's actually like good? No.
Have you ever read Paradise Lost?
No.
So, okay. It just seems really clear to me that in the world where you are humble, you are you don't even have to give an answer to people who are saying, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Like, I literally don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have things to do. How do I know what I've got to do? Because I prayed. I sought God. I meditated on what was his will for me to do today. I actually meditated. I actually thought about this. And I closed my eyes, and what I do is I imagine Jesus walking around my house and interacting with people and things. And I just imagine it happening. And then I try to go about my day and live my day in that way. You know, does Jesus have all the quirks I have? Like, no. Would he have a Coca-Cola instead of a soda water? I don't know. Like,
maybe.
Would he eat keto all the time? I don't know. But, like, this is the best I can do.